Hello, everyone. This is the Prometheus Dev Summit. It is the 26th of October, 2023. Prometheus Dev Summit, as per usual, we do follow the code of conduct. This is recorded for YouTube, and we get started with, I didn't actually prepare anything, so I'm going to do this raw. Also, we have much fewer people here than I had hoped. Okay, so vote-wise, we would be talking mixins, but we don't have Frederick here. And we don't have Björn here, and we don't have Metalmatze here, and so let me see. We don't have Bartik as well. This is going to be one of those. Don't have Brian. Okay, this is one of the weirder ones. Do we have Jesus? Yes, okay. So even though it doesn't have the most votes, should we talk Prometheus 3.0 coordination? Because at least we have the people who voted for this and who put it onto the agenda in this call. And while you discuss, I'm going to poke a few people about potentially joining. So Jesus, over to you.
Okay. Do you want to copy the item down to the agenda or yeah?
I'm doing it. Just start.
Okay. So right. So the point is about kind of like managing the release of Prometheus 3.0. I know we haven't yet decided when this will happen. We have that email chain where we are discussing whether it will happen in April or more like November or like. But we will decide that. I guess. But I think we will also benefit from some people, since it's like a bunch of changes, like native histograms, that potential new UI, exporter changes, out-of-order changes, OTLP changes, that we will benefit from someone coordinating everything. And we know that Grafana might be able to allocate resources to have someone dedicated to doing this. So I just bring the point to see if there is some interest in, and if we think this could work. And if this person needs or could be a team member or not a team member, and maybe a good opportunity to bring someone new into the team. So that's the point.
I have one question. What kind of coordination is that you have in mind? Just like organizing PRs, what goes in, what goes, what ways?
So I sketched like a very fast. Oh, by the way, this doesn't need to be a one person; could be a group of people. So I made like a quick list of things. So we mentioned things like we have a gazillion flags in Prometheus. We want to decide which ones to clean, which ones to keep. We want to properly track what goes in the release, what goes out. And let's say if it's going to be in November and we commit for a new UI, but by September there are no changes in the UI, someone also needs to say this won't make it to the release. What else? We also need to, I guess, have a clear, like reach out to the community, have a clear release cadence. Like maybe if we want to release the release candidate by November, then maybe we want the beta in October and the alpha in September. I don't know. So all these things, I guess, having like a document that maps them out, and then maybe a GitHub project that tracks everything. I don't know. I think it will bring clarity to the whole milestone of releasing Prometheus 3.0. And yeah, that's the point.
Also making sure that we can attract new contributors, like tweeting about like issues related to Prometheus 3.0. Kind of also be part of it, I would guess, like kind of setting the scope for the release and building consensus on the scope of what needs to be in the release, and then making sure we're making enough progress, making sure we're tweeting about it and inviting more contributions and stuff like that, I would assume. Like we've kind of done something like this, but we've never had a role. But like I would kind of like to assign a role to this as well, just to make sure it's done. Yeah.
It's good to me.
Yeah, and the idea will be like to do this transparently, like in the Prometheus dev channel, being transparent with the community, involve people, um, all those things.
So what is really needed here? Just the consensus of the team.
Yes. Like so far, Prometheus team member has done something like this, but I don't see any of the Prometheus team members having the bandwidth for this. So we kind of want to open it up to non-Prometheus members. Like there will always be a Suz and me and anyone else who can kind of help massage this through. But we want to open the role up for somebody not yet in team, because yeah, there are some volunteers.
Maybe as a meta point, we are generally, I mean, we have been trying to open up more and more and more over the years. And this arguably has had some success, but not as much as we would have liked. So pretty much all areas of potential contributions, we are more than happy to have people who come into Prometheus team in the medium term. And sooner is better. I don't think we need a call for consensus on this one, because it's basically a case of just do it. So Jan already put himself in as a volunteer. Anyone else on this call, or anyone seeing the recording, or whatever, or if you just want to shadow and basically see how this is done, also completely fine. Like you don't have to carry the main work. It's also fine to just sit on the wall and observe what happens. So maybe you can do it next time if you want to.
If somebody puts their name in the list, do we need like contact information?
Doesn't hurt. You can also email Prometheus team. I mean, anyone on this call, we probably have some way or form of reaching them, but if you're willing to put your email address into this somewhat public document, that's probably easiest. And there will be an email thread, and you will be CC'd on it, and we go from there. It's we already have 2 people. And want to write yourselves in. Frederick is a little bit ill, but I made Matze appear, so I'm just going to hand over to Matze and pretend he's Frederick.
Sure. Did Frederick write this? He wrote
Yes.
this into the agenda. I wasn't even aware that he wrote that. Yeah, I guess we can make mixins, and especially the mix tool part of Prometheus. I guess the kind of rationale behind all of it is we have mixins as part of many projects, and also like projects, not only community projects, but like Node Exporter and Prometheus itself, Alert Manager, and a bunch of others. So kind of just signaling that we as Prometheus community are kind of like doubling down, or kind of like just stating the obvious, that mixins have been a way to pull alerts and recording rules and oftentimes dashboards into systems, and then being able to kind of mix them as needed. So I don't think there's any bigger rationale behind all of this. I can double check with Frederick, but I think that's mostly it. And then maybe we can get some more contributions on the mix tool, for example, and make it a bit nicer. Maybe have like I don't know, like Bubble Tea or some like more interactive CLI tools take care of creating new mixins, etc. So just to lower the entry barrier for people writing mixins for their own exporters, for example, that they write. So like every single Prometheus exporter should have a mixin because they probably have some metrics that they expose. That's just my opinion right now. Good.
It's only slightly related, but I'm the official maintainer of a number of those mixins. And that just happened because I shepherded some pull requests into merging 4 years ago. And I'm not, given my current focus and limited resources, I'm not a good maintainer of these mixins. And kind of when somebody filed a pull request and was clear that this is an improvement, I just merged it. But if we want to double down on that, we should have a better maintainer than me. I mean, it's just a few, right? I think it would be a bad signal if people then like get all excited and contribute to that, and then you get just a grumpy backlog. I mean, not grumpy, but I'm very backlogged with reviews, and it would be cool to make sure nothing bad happens then at this point.
On this point, I can reach out to other Prometheus maintainers. Like I guess we are the most aggressive consumers of mixins, and people are active on this area, I guess.
Yeah, and it might be also pretty cool. Like it's a easy thing to do if you know what you're doing, right? But it's not, you don't have to know the whole Prometheus ecosystem to be a maintainer of one of those mixins. So It might be a good thing to replace me there by somebody who's more involved in the mixins, and it might be a ramp up to maintain more. The same.
No, I agree with the statement. I think it's still super valuable for the people who also kind of like add the metrics and instrument, for example, in the Go code, and have them kind of also be involved in the mixins to some extent. Because if a metric name changes or like anything changes with the underlying metrics, those should be at some point reflected in the mixins. But I think that can also be a separate person. I'm just saying it doesn't hurt, right? But if you are willing to give away some of the workload, like I'm sure we can find people, and I'm more than happy to review all of the mixin things. Usually, I'm pretty much following these anyways. So yeah, and I guess it comes naturally from being a Prometheus maintainer as well, as Arthur said. Yeah. Jan?
I just want to mention, and apology for my poor sound, we've had a couple of people who wanted to, do more in the mixins, and we've had this chicken and egg problem where to get someone to actually look at it is required to become a maintainer, and that's sort of the barrier since we lack maintainers. So yeah, if we have like a good strategy to enable these people, then I think we'll find some.
In what way do you think they are blocked making contributions? I don't see the connection there.
I think they had trouble getting reviews on their PRs, but I don't have actual links right now ready. I can dig those out if you want.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I guess that's kind of what alluding to what Björn said. In that case, yeah, I guess Arthur or like I can kind of like write myself into the code owners file if we have that, and then load balance to Arthur or some other person who is kind of like happy to help with those mixing things, at least on the official Prometheus repositories, right? Yeah. So I guess like the mixins, some of them are like they always should live close to the code itself, right? So they should live within Node Exporter or Prometheus or like within a given exporter. So I think that part can almost stay the same. The question would be, do we like move the mix tool out of, I don't even know which organization it is in, into like Prometheus community, for example, to signal it a bit more openly, or even into Prometheus itself. I'm happy to talk to Frederick again what he envisioned. Either one would be fine for me personally. So it's just this like little, just for context, Mixtool is like a little wrapper around Git and JSON bundler, and it spits out some YAML or JSON files that can be consumed by Prometheus. So I guess it makes sense, yeah. Like it or generates YAML files. That's what I'm trying to say. So I guess, should we vote for consensus on whether or not we as Prometheus team want to accept the Mixtool, the small CLI project into Prometheus itself or into Prometheus community? What do people think?
I was about to say we need to discuss where before we can have a call for consensus, but beyond this, yes.
Okay, let me quickly write to Frederick what he thought, but I guess, okay, Prometheus community.
Fair point, Ben. Also, in theory, we can just generally talk about accepting it, and then still have like the detail. I mean, it's not a detail if it's Prometheus community or Prometheus, but it's still. Does anyone have a strong opinion either way?
Question out of curiosity: what is the main differences between the two repositories, two organizations? Sorry.
The Prometheus org is basically the Prometheus project itself, whereas Prometheus community is a designated place for stuff which is adjacent to Prometheus, but not actually run by the Prometheus project itself. So things which, for example, are like exporters which we don't maintain, but which are common enough for people to just maintain them closer to Prometheus.
If it goes to Prometheus, it means needs to be someone from Prometheus team to maintain. Is that it?
No, you can be a maintainer for this without having to be a Prometheus team member. But it is one of like, if you're maintaining stuff within the main Prometheus org, it's kind of the assumption that at least in the medium term you are becoming, or at least on a path to becoming, a Prometheus team member if you so choose. This is not the case for Prometheus community. On the flip side, we actually make some guarantees around the software quality on the Prometheus org. Whereas in Prometheus community, it's like we don't not care, but it's not us really being all in on this must be perfect.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
The Prometheus community still basically both Prometheus and Prometheus community need a Prometheus team member involved. In Prometheus community, it tends to be a sponsor. So for example, the Helm charts, I don't maintain any of the Helm charts, but I am one of the Prometheus team sponsors to manage the repo.
So,
Yeah,
consensus.
I would actually just say let's move it into Prometheus community for now and see how it goes over time and clean it up a bunch and stuff, and then we can see how we'll go forward with it in the long run. So then we can just find consensus in that, hopefully.
Yeah, that's also good. So let me see. Consensus. We are fine with we are fine with accepting it into Prometheus community. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing? Okay.
Perfect. I actually have a second call for consensus probably, but let's discuss the topic first. Part of like the mix tool is a CLI tool, and then I guess we need to talk to Pavel again. But he kind of took all of the mixins and compiled all of them into a gigantic list of possible mixins that people can consume. And this website was created to browse all of the mixins, which I think is really great because it actually uses the underlying mixins maintained by also maintainers, right, of Prometheus, etc., to have something. What was like Promcat, similar to Promcat or something. So I think something like that is super nice. And I think what has once been discussed is moving that into the Prometheus website. So I guess that's kind of up for discussion and kind of like curious what people think. Basically that people can either like find mixin through the website of Prometheus.io, or they can just copy paste actually maintained and proper recording rules and alerting rules from the website. That was kind of one of the other topics I think that was at some point brought up with the mixins and accepting mixins in Mixtool. So I'm just curious what people think. Is it too much to put into the website, or is it actually super helpful? And again, this wasn't my work. It was Pavel, so we probably need to ask him if he would be okay with that. But maybe not call for consensus right now, but just curious what people think. Any thoughts?
I think it's useful for like really someone that just beginning at Prometheus, but as time passes, like, people usually customize that a lot. I'm not sure if it's about the website. I'm like, no opinions.
I guess no one is super interested in this right now, which is also fine. Maybe we can instead, for the meantime, given that also Mixtool is only going into Prometheus community, at the page on Prometheus.io talking about mixins themselves, and then potentially linking to this generated page, so we don't like take all of it into Prometheus.io and start this massive work, etc. So that might be something we can do in the meantime, and then making this somewhat more public and more searchable, etc. But it also isn't like fully integrated just yet and can stay its own thing for the time being. I saw one thumbs up. Any thoughts on that instead of like fully integrating already? You're muted, Richie.
Yeah, it doesn't sound bad. We can also write a blog post, things like this.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think we need full consensus or anything like this. Like, just by the fact of us accepting this into closer proximity, all the rest just flows from this, I think.
And like I don't have a strong opinion whether it should be part of Prometheus.io or linked from Prometheus.io. I think the main driver for that is however much work someone is willing to put into doing it. Right.
Yeah. I guess we need to ask Pavel, because again, he created and generated that website, and I'm not even sure we talked to him about this specific topic. He's back into contributing more into upstream projects again, which is great since he like moved companies. But yeah, again, I'll reach out, and then I think a blog post is also a super nice idea. So we can do that for the beginning as well. Right, I'll just write that down, but I think we can move on to the next topic. And I might just continue doing that offline and then see you at the next Dev Summit, because I need to finish some work and then move house in 2 days. So yeah, limited time. But thank you for asking, and see you soon.
So,
Bye.
FYI, I also poked Bartek, but he didn't reply yet. So we now have Ben with materialized metrics. There is a design doc link with to do, so maybe it's not the right time to do this yet, but maybe it is. Ben, is it? Okay, for the non-regular members in this call right now, this is not how those usually run. This call is kind of a weird one with so few people and everything.
Let me check where he is.
For people who don't know,
Ben
Gauss
might
and
be in the
Ben
same
co-work.
Wake up, Ben.
Oh, so basically Ben couldn't hear you, but he's coming. Yeah, we're going to discuss materialized views.
So Ben, can you hear us now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
Nice.
That was weird.
So materialized metrics has the highest votes, but there is a design doc link to do. So are you up for talking about this or not?
Yeah, I can talk about what we've got sort of in the back of my brain for the design doc. Basically, materialized views is a variation of recording rules, but instead of inserting new metrics into the existing TSDB, it will basically read the write-ahead log and create new time series based on the incoming scrape data and into a new time series database. So there will be the normal raw time series database and then the materialized time series database. And basically what will happen is, to use an example, you can create a say a without instance label materialized view, and it will select all metrics named $_total. And so any counter with a total will come in, and it will remove the instance label from that metric and create a new time series. And the first sample it gets, that will be the 0 sample. And then the next sample it receives, that will count as an increment from that first sample, and it will append that increment to the new time series. And this way, we can create counters that are based on the original raw data, but the cardinality will be without instance and pod. So if you have 1,000 pods, this will pre-aggregate a counter that you can manipulate as a normal time series without those pod labels. And so this has a bunch of advantages. For example, if you're doing multi-window, multi-burn rate recording rules, you don't have to create a whole bunch of pre-aggregated recording rules and suffer some of the inaccuracies you get with those recording rules, where you're having to do like average over time 30 days of a 5-minute rate window. You can actually just ask for the rate 30 day, so the rate 30 day, and use the underlying counter and get rid of some of the extrapolation errors that you would normally get. One of the things that we noticed at GitLab a long time ago was that there were differences between using the raw metric data and the recording rule data. Usually out in like the 5th or 6th decimal place, but if you're trying to get 5 nines, that can start to actually make your SLOs inaccurate.
I have a question. Like, I don't know if it might be a little bit dumb, but one of the things that I see sometimes people complain is like when you are using recording rules, you like duplicating the amount of series you have because recording rules is creating new one. Like, could we have like any strategy or in recording rules or materialize the views to drop the original series after the aggregation? Like, this might be a solution.
So part of my idea here is because it's going to be a separate head and a separate TSDB, that can have its own retention policy separate from the main. So there will be a materialized retention policy and a raw retention policy, and that way you could keep the raw data for say 1 day, but keep your materialized views for as long as you want. And so that gives us one of the major use cases that people talk about, like, hey, I want to have variable retention. And this would allow, this is like one sort of solution for variable retention as a side effect.
Especially because you can like pre-compute those expensive expressions and don't need to store the raw data for too long. Yeah, that's cool.
Yep. So this doesn't do any of the this doesn't replace recording rules, because this will only materialize new vectors. You'll still have to run rates, but because you're say 1,000 to 1 reducing or your TSDB block, the rate becomes super cheap.
Yeah, makes sense. Just one thing that might be this might confuse in the future, but people used to look to recording rules as materialized views, and materialized views might make some confusion in the name, but the idea looks awesome for me.
Yeah. Recording rules are a variation of, are a type of materialized view, but they don't allow you to keep the underlying counter values. And so basically, we'll be the kind of the idea is with counters, we'll be taking and depolling the increments. And so we'll take the incoming increments, or we'll take the incoming counter data, and we'll turn them back from poles to deltas. So we're going to kind of deltaify the incoming scrapes.
And okay, but it sounds like there's like a lot of things going on here already.
Yes.
That sounds very complex, probably needs at least to be written down in detail before anyone can make a good decision.
I've been trying to get all the details straight in my head, and I've got an internal design doc that I've been working on, but I need to get it published publicly.
Yeah. So like new separate site TSDB, deltification, on the fly automatic rule thingy. I didn't fully get it yet, but it sounds interesting and something I would read.
Yep.
I would also be interested in which of these things are a hard dependency on one another, and which of these are independent pieces, right? Like multiple TSDBs doesn't seem like it's a precondition to just writing, like we could just write new time series into the existing TSDB.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a separate TSDB, but there are some nice properties about making it a separate TSDB, or at least separate blocks. So for example, there's a similar feature in Thanos where Thanos does the downsampling, and it produces it does this asynchronously with its compactor, where it takes many blocks, a big time window, and generates 5-minute sample blocks with a more complex data structure. So instead of just float 64s, it actually includes the delta. It includes a new counter, the average, the min, the max, and like the number and a couple of other sample values, and it stores that as a new. It's a special Thanos chunk called a downsample chunk, and this would be we might actually use some of that, because that way we can also handle some of the gauge operations on a materialized view. So you can get min, max, average of the samples that you're getting for a gauge. Gautam.
I just want to add that there is a lot of value for this, I think, because sometimes you just want to drop the instance. Like, this is not recommended. It goes against all the best practices, but sometimes you just want to for particular jobs. This might also help solve the extremely short-lived Lambda monitoring problems as well, because even there we want to just drop the things. So I think there's a lot of value here. So yeah, happy to help with the design doc.
There's one other interesting side effect of this for the slow-moving counter problem, where you have a very small number of, say, 500 errors. By taking all the increments and coalescing them into a single time series, you get more accurate extrapolations. So if you've got, say 1,000 instances and you get 100, 500 errors within a 15-second window, that is now a 15 increment, instead of having to extrapolate one increment over a bunch. There's a bunch of floating point issues there. And also we can do things like, one of the other features in there that I was thinking about is the materialization has its own separate interval. So you could do 15-second scrapes, but only 30-second materializations. Anyway, that's the general concept. There are at least a couple of Prometheus competitors and/or add-ons that do similar things.
Björn.
Yeah, I already put it into the notes prematurely. This sounds different from the scrape time rule evaluations, which we have an OpenPR forever, and nobody is picking it up. But it also sounds not completely orthogonal. So I'm wondering if there is, what's the overlap, and could we tackle both in the same go, or would it be completely different things? It's been frozen now. Okay.
I don't remember what the scrape time thing was all about.
Like standing rules, essentially. If you remember.
I don't remember that one.
Okay.
This is possibly more similar to the Mimir adaptive metrics that Grafana Cloud does, but is not available.
Anyway, I think whoever writes
it's kind of similar, but not exactly.
Whoever is involved in design should probably look at this pull request as well, because we also had I'm not too deep into it, but I remember also discussions about counter semantics in there and stuff like that. So maybe there's some overlap. Okay, just wanted to throw this in case there's a link.
I think that's just you, Ben. I can hear Bjorn well.
Yeah, me too.
Anyway, I will bring this back to another Dev Summit when I actually have the design doc ready for public.
Sounds good. I reached Bartek. He's on PTO. He's not coming. So let me see what we have next. Sorry, I had to reboot my machine for something was weird, and I lost a lot of tabs. I'm currently looking for the in that document.
Your audio is shit again.
Is it better? No?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry, I'm still getting the hang of the whole thing. I said I had to reboot my machine because something was weird. But also seeing how many tabs I have, I know why my machine probably just decided to commit seppuku at some point. So Bartek is not coming, he's on PTO. So we are skipping that one. We also we like Simon, we like Josh, who is in a different call and couldn't make it. We don't have Chris. Björn, how about mad functions in PromQL?
Yeah, that's actually quite has got new relevance. Okay, so are you moving the notes down? Okay, so I mean the superficial thing here is, I mean, or the concrete tangible thing is there. We have a concrete proposal to have a mad function in PromQL, which is linked there. Which is ancient, actually. Of course, Victoria Metrics has it, needless to say. But there's a bigger issue here at hand. It's the whole, so do we want to offer so the bigger issue is, do we want to offer a way to create custom functions, right? Which is the more conservative we are with adding new function to PromQL proper, the higher there's a pressure for users to create their own stuff. However, there was always, at least for the old days, that's certainly true, and it might have changed now, there was always the idea that PromQL shouldn't be like a fully fledged statistical language or whatever for everything, and it should also, like, alerts. I mean, it sounds weird if you see really complex PromQL expressions, but I still see PromQL as a language for simple stuff, right? And alerts should be simple. Like, if you get paged, you shouldn't look at an alert and have no clue what's happening. And so user-defined functions or some kind of built-in macro expansion have this problem that people will create layers on layers on layers because they are programmers. And that was that happened a lot at Google back in the days with Borgman, and it was really hard. And this is probably where this is coming from, our inherited paranoia of like giving too powerful tools to PromQL coders, right? That might be different now, the perspective, because Prometheus is used for everything, including SauerDAO monitoring. So maybe statistical functions should be there. So there are different ways out here, right? The one way would be we're just super liberal in accepting functions, could be behind a feature flag. I mean, it's easy coding-wise, right? It's just we cannot tell everyone to build their own Prometheus version with their own function compiled in. That would be the one extreme direction. The other extreme direction would be to not do anything. But there's a third way, which is allow users to define functions, not necessarily in PromQL itself, but more like in a scripting language. And I was thinking about having like a Python script engine in there, or a Lua or something. But my colleague Janet, aka Zenador, just coded, because she could, she coded a Tango evaluation engine in a way into Prometheus, and there's a pull request for that. And yeah, so if we want this, if you like this approach, and there are reasons to not want it, but maybe it's like I tend towards this would be good, then we could also do it with a different language. But like there was silence on the PR except myself, right? So I would like to get an idea of what people think. If this is like at least something like, well, maybe we should think about it, then we could write a proper design doc. But if everyone says no, that would be fundamentally against what Prometheus is for, then we could save the work. Yeah, so that's kind of it, the whole complex here. So thoughts, what do you think? We have hands. Richie was first, I think.
Yes. I'm going to say something which might be controversial, but I think this actually quite strongly. I think there is space for us to try this behind the feature flag, blah, 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 the usual. But the one concern which I have is we won't have any overview of what people do with the thing. And I think this would take a massive amount of value out of allowing experimentation with third-party functions, because we cannot see what the natural consensus of the wider user base is. And in my somewhat strong opinion, or in my pretty strong opinion, we should actually use this as signal and input of what users want, what we currently don't do for them. Long story short, we could consider to potentially have a callback function in the Prometheus binary, which sends back baseline telemetry to us, and we can then say that, hey, this is a Prometheus server and it is using this and that extra function. We obviously would have the ability to extract other information, like, for example, how many instances do we have? How many people, like how many series do we have? How many CPUs do we have? So if we do this, there would be a nice opportunity to actually get more data. Just going to click it. We would have a nice way to get more data, which might actually be beneficial to Prometheus at large as a project.
Okay, Julius, you were next.
Lots of raised hands suddenly. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting idea. Of course, I think that's a way bigger question, even where you cannot turn on telemetry reporting phoning home without an opt-in, I think. So we would only get it from very few Prometheus servers probably in the world. So I don't know. But yeah, on the overall custom functions via Tango PR, I had a look at it. It looks good, like code-wise and everything. But the question is also for me, like, it would be quite a fundamental change in the flexibility we allow in Prometheus, and every Prometheus server out there would now have a different set of functions. And what does that mean in terms of supportability, user confusion, documentation, even getting first-time users to understand, like, do they need this or not? Like these things always kind of come to my mind first, even if I myself could think of a million cool ways of using it for like non-standard system monitoring use cases. So I'm definitely worried about it, but I also find it cool. So I'm a little bit like 60% towards not doing it and 40% towards doing it. That's just kind of my current stance.
My opinion is quite similar. I am super concerned about how support would look like to a Prometheus that just runs random scripts. But also, I think there are quite a few PromQL engine implementations out there, and I think I might be speaking bullshit, but I think it would be nice that Prometheus could let people choose the PromQL engine instead of using the default. So people can use the Thanos PromQL, Victormetrics PromQL, and at least they are not running random stuff. They have a place that they can go to when things go wrong.
Can I quickly interject just to that? Like, because I think that might be worse from my view, especially with Victoria metrics being so similar but different and being like explicitly incompatible but not really communicating it well. I would rather people would converge on one standard for the core of PromQL and not let the user choose, in our system at least, between different incompatible, differently behaving implementations of the same function.
Yeah. This has already caused weirdness, like confusion among users if they had like doing the same thing but in slightly different ways. So I mean, a pluggable Prometheus engine would be maybe kind of a different question to ask here. And yeah. Anyway, Matthias, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, okay, let me try to go in order. So this MAD function, like from a 10-second read of Wikipedia, that actually sounds really useful in a monitoring context, and I think we should just accept it. Secondly, sending telemetry, I'm not totally against it, but I am very, very worried about anything that sends strings, which would include function names. Someone's going to put something sensitive in a function name, some internal project name, and then they're going to be very, very mad that we have their data.
Yeah, mad over time.
Exactly. So we would have to be extremely careful with that, especially if we want to report on something like this. As an alternative to that, I wonder if we can establish a place where users can bring functions to us that they think are relevant, which Richie doesn't want that. So what I'm thinking is a lot of the functions that we have, maybe we don't actually need to implement them in Go, right? Maybe we could have a standard library. We could have an extended community library. Let people actually share that code. If we can also have them share it on their own GitHub, and then we can troll GitHub for it. In any case, anything other than extracting strings from people's runtime environment and sending it over the internet.
Yeah. Okay. How you is that correct, more or less?
Oh yes. Hello. Yes. I was just thinking. It will be not so practical if someone has an idea and Prometheus just incorporate that new function, new script engines into the core engine. Maybe we can use the something like a dynamic load in the C languages to and also we implement interface so that they can register a function in a dynamic library, and they can call the function from that PromQL, maybe. Yeah, for example, I find a library can dynamically load the libraries into the Go runtime.
I think we had a similar discussion for service discovery, right? To provide a binary plugin architecture, and I think we didn't do it because it wasn't really working. That might have changed by now with a more evolved Go ecosystem, or it might also be that we just want the static binary approach, period, and don't want pluggable thing. Yeah, I mean, it's we're touching different technical dimensions here in which direction we could go.
Yeah, I think the Go module system basically required you to compile and build each module with the same exact Go version and everything else as the main binary. So we would still kind of have to distribute everything together. Otherwise, people would have a hard time building a module for some random Prometheus binary.
And by module, you mean loadable binary module, not a Go module, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think if we don't want to link them into our Prometheus, maybe we can implement something like they spawn a new process using another program and pipe data to the program, and they give the data back.
Yeah, we had that idea as well for different interfaces, but
yeah, we have that with file service discovery, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we never wanted to execute processes because there's a bunch of problems down that line as well. But yeah, reading from files is something we did, but that doesn't work anymore once you want to like back and forth execute something. So yeah.
And if you really, really want to do that, I guess in a way you can get close to it with remote read. Right? It's kind of like
what I'm gonna say.
You could have a remote read that then reads back from the Prometheus does stuff.
And people do that, right?
Yeah, but then the
Um,
scripting engine might be faster in the end.
There's a super old robust perception article of how to do that against MySQL, for example.
Okay, but let's first, Nicholas, you had raised your hand. Or...
Yeah, that's basically what I was gonna say. Like, looks like we're discussing different types of implementation. Like, looks like we still need to understand if it makes sense to add these or not. And yeah, what Matthias said, it's basically the idea. Like, if we can use like remote reads to achieve this two different kinds of query engines. Yeah.
Okay, Richie. You are very mute again.
Yes, I'm muted. I'm still figuring this setup out. Sorry. I'm going to say something very contentious again. I do think that having a respectful opt-out is an option. Like aggressively pushing information in changelog in every single default config about, hey, this is what we do, this is why we do it, and just uncomment this one line and you're opting out, but have it as kind of a respectful opt-out, also potentially with like one release where you have a breaking change of, hey, this is going to happen, so they have one more cycle of preparing for this. And like, I do think there is some space and argument to be made to allow this kind of thing. And the reason why I think this, as one of the probably most privacy conscious people in this whole call, is I don't think we as a project and we as a community want to allow a complete free for all, because I do think it will degrade Prometheus massively to some users for certain reasons. And even if they put their super secret thing in a function name, I would much rather have very strong and sturdy documentation about, hey, this is what is currently happening, and this is what we extract. We can also have, for example, privacy mechanisms that only if X amount of instances send us a function name or something, only then do we actually put this into the database or anything. But I think we will be doing the wider ecosystem a disfavor in the long term if we just allow random stuff, because it will be a free for all and there will be so much stuff which just breaks Prometheus.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There are so many different directions to go into. Maybe we could first start with, I mean, a very easy step would be to accept implementations like MAD and MAD over time more easily behind the feature flag, of course. Like, I think the Hold Winters example was discouraging because A, it wasn't a real Hold Winters, and B, it was probably very niche. And now it's a function you have to support forever, but we didn't have feature flags back then, right? So we could have a feature, I mean, then again, people might argue we have feature flag creep here and everywhere feature flags, but I don't know, we might accept a bunch of stats functions and have a feature flag extended functions or something. That would maybe take away the pressure from all the other things, and then we could decide about those without this pressure of people wanting certain functionalities. Like Jeanette explicitly wrote in her pull request, this solves that so many users want function X, Y, or Z, and we can't give it to them. And if we just give it to them, maybe that's yeah, an easy step, right? And we don't have to solve all the other questions right now that we discussed.
It would also be more performant.
Yes, of course, yeah. Unless, of course, we do like binary plugins that just work as quickly as native code. But then again, like the Hold Winters, it's like the MAD thing is really like that because there's not just one MAD, right? There is different variations of MAD, mean of, what is it? I wrote it a bit, mean deviation around median and mean deviation around mean. These are two different things that are both called MAD here and there. So it's all Hold Winters all over again. Yeah, and then there is also this case, which I also listed above, about functions that could be implemented via PromQL means, but they just look very weird. And it's z-score over time. I think that's something you could relatively easily code with your bare hands in PromQL. But yeah, people just want something which could be solved with like internal PromQL functions, which again might be something we don't want for other reasons. Yeah, I don't know. Richie, you have more thoughts.
Yes. So 2 points to this. A, it might actually be good middle ground to just accept a few more functions behind the feature flag. And this brings me directly to the next point. One of the benefits of having telemetry from all the instances would be us being able to be much more aggressive in getting rid of feature flags one way or the other. Either us just making something enabled by default because everyone is using that feature anyway, or being more bold in removing experiments if we know that no one is using the stuff anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think the telemetry, or whatever we call it, thing might deserve a separate decision because it would also be helpful in other aspects, right? So maybe we should decide that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and we should have a deep think about what we can and cannot include there, how we handle the data, what that means in terms of like what do we need to do in terms of compliance, like where can we even send that data, right? Like,
Talk to the CNCF, like what do they think about this kind of idea?
yeah. So I think that's a different issue than do we add functions or do we add a scripting language? I think we need to we can't tie these two together.
What
And
I can
on
offer is
the-
I can talk to Chris and Michael. Of course, between Michael, the head of legal of Linux Foundation, of course, between the two of them, we will either get an informed opinion or we will at least get a pointer, and I can also, in theory, take this to the TOC and governing board if need be, of course, obviously. And I can try and do this before the next Dev Summit, so then I just put something on the backlog, and when/if something comes up, we can have a discussion, because we do need a discussion and we do need a broad consensus and we do need good messaging if we pursue this. And to also be very clear, I used to be on the precise other side of this debate. I've just seen over time that this is actually immensely useful for the project and by extension for the users.
I think we're also in an interesting like window of time now that we've said we're gonna do 3.0. Both for something like telemetry collection, which could be like opt in now, opt out in 3.0. But also something like additional functions that we could add now behind a feature flag, and then for 3.0 make a call what's in, what's out. So I think I'm all in favor for like accepting functions right now. I'm not 100% sure about adding a scripting language, but I've wanted it for relabeling for many times. So generally, I think that's a good. I think that is a direction that we need to go in. It's in some form. I'm not so hot on binary plugins or like messing with the like deep runtime state.
Okay, should we try to find consensus probably? I mean, there are different questions, right? I don't think it feels like we cannot make a final call about sending telemetry data, but we could have the consensus of inquiring, what we just said, right? Legal stuff, how is this working in different CNCF projects, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, adding other functions. I mean, maybe thanks for writing this. Maybe should decide, should we consider stuff that can already be implemented in other ways in PromQL. It might just be a bit more clunky. Is that a legitimate reason to include another function, or should we have the basic idea that if there is a relatively straightforward way to implement it, we should not have a separate function? That would be interesting.
I think we need to make a call on a case-by-case basis. In general, I would say we know that PromQL with recording rules is Turing complete. So excluding things because you could do them in theory doesn't, like, that would exclude everything.
Yeah, but I mean, the Turing completeness is that you can build a Turing machine where the evaluation time is a step in the Turing machine, right? That doesn't mean you can create time series in any, I mean, it's a different definition, right? And also, like, it should be within reason, right? If the PromQL implementation is like 20 lines, that's kind of pretty clear. But like, let's say we could have, I mean, there could be an argument we should have an average, not an average, like for summary, we want a predefined function that just does the rate of sum divided by rate of count, right? Which everyone always writes, and you could say that's already too long. And the z-score thing is a bit in that domain where it's actually not overly long, and it might also be a bit niche, right? So we could actually say people who really need it can implement it that way. I don't know.
If we can improve performance with Go, like with a proper function, instead of like a huge PromQL, then I would be in favor. If there's no difference, I don't see why having two ways of doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think the performance argument, we could always optimize the PromQL engine, right? There are so many dimensions we can optimize this. Like, let's say if we had some branch detection that would detect where I'm calculating the same branch in the AST twice, I could just do it once. That would probably already give you most of the performance improvement you could get. And that would be useful anyway. Like, I wouldn't use the performance argument to justify like having those proxy functions that are just other PromQL expressions in as a syntactic sugar, essentially. Yeah, Matthias.
I think it's just going to have to be a basically freeway thing every time, like freeway decision every time, or like weighing a bunch of factors like performance, how many people actually need this, how complicated is it actually, if you can do it at all, how complicated is it to do?
Yeah, okay, so I would then say
like
the litmus test would be if it's similar to rate of sum divided by rate of count. If it's similar than that, we wouldn't provide a specific function, because we have lived for 10 years with rate of sum divided by rate of count and never implemented a dedicated function for precisely that, right? So, and it's the most frequent thing you do. So it's, if that was needed, we don't need to simplify something at that level. And if it's something bizarre, we could say, yeah, maybe. Right? Okay, Nicholas.
One question, like, what is the reasonable to not simplify on that level? Like, the idea is not make PromQL easy enough for everyone.
I think the one thing is PromQL should not have an enormous amount of functions that people have to learn when they want to learn all of PromQL, or they have to know when they want to read all of PromQL, right? I mean, if you're a user, you can pick the functions you know, but if you're an engineer on call, you get a page and you see the alerting expression that has function you've never used in your life, then you have to understand the function before you can even start to understand the issue. That's a bit of the argument. On the other hand, if like what you want is a z-score, and many people know what the z-score is, and what you see is a balloonish PromQL expression, then you could argue seeing z-score is actually easier to understand. But same argument could be made for this, like rate of count divided by rate of sum, not the other way around. But it's, I mean, there is all the old hand Google people got burned by this Borgmont power, where you had built-in macro expansion, you had 5 level deeps of macro expansion, and the moment you allow like custom functions in any way, you would inevitably get them.
Gmail Borgmont templates, nightmare.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it's coming from, and this is the argument here is that PromGL is not a general purpose number juggling function language, right? It's specifically for metrics-based monitoring and alerting, and it's an anti-pattern to have super complex expressions there, although they are sometimes necessary, but it's not the main use case. That's kind of, I think, where this is coming from. And yeah, as Matthias said, it's kind of you have to use good judgment here to make the call. But I think it's important to have this in mind, that it's from a very pure programming perspective. Of course, you want to have custom functions to give nice names to a complex expression, but in a non-very intuitive way that might bite you. Okay, Gautam.
I just want to ask, can we add X-rate behind the same feature flag, or is it not possible to implement X-rate without major changes?
I don't think it's an implementation problem. We have PRs for that, right? I mean, I personally don't think it's an improvement, but I also said that I won't block it. I just want at least one experienced Prometheus person who says they have confidence it's the right solution. And nobody ever stepped up, and I hope that I'm not perceived as threatening. Like, I don't want to, I won't kill you if you're not right. I just want you to honestly admit that you think it has the potential of an improvement, like you have reasonable confidence for that. And then everyone said, no, I don't know it either, right? That's the only requirement I have.
You say that as you are in a super dark room. You look scary.
Sorry, is that like meant literally?
That was not relevant at all.
Yeah. Sun has set here in Europe by now. No, but I mean, I think we derailed the discussion even more. I don't think with X-rate the problem is that we don't want a better rate. I mean, a problem is certainly we don't want to offer, because somebody literally proposed Y rate now, right? So we are just need another week for Z rate. So we don't want to have a zoo of rate implementation that people have to pick from. That's another reason, right? While like mad, if it's actually something we need, nobody would say, oh, this is just the same thing slightly differently, right? So it's kind of, I think it's a different discussion to have here.
But in summary, this means the answer to Gautam's question is yes.
What was the question?
If X-rate can be done in behind this feature flag, and the answer is yes, on the condition that someone is confident in merging into PR.
The X-rate is not the rate that starts with a 0 always?
The X-rate, I mean, the various proposals for X-rate, they are slightly different, are to essentially look a bit before the actual range interval, so you can, I mean, there are different advantages stated. One is that you always have 2 values, even if you have an interval that is too short, that you make sure if you do it in a graph that you have overlapping intervals and you don't miss pieces in between. Like the counterintuitive thing is with the classical, you do a rate 5 minute and you have points on your Grafana graph that is every 5 minutes, and then you actually lose quote unquote data, because between your 5 minute rate intervals, you always have a delta that is not in the interval because the points don't overlap. And that's naturally the case with X-rate. Sometimes they want integer numbers, but that's only what some people want. And I actually think that would be really a mistake to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's a very long-winded discussion, and it's a very loaded topic. And yeah, I mean, I don't think the problem we have here, do we want to allow a whole zoo of new functions and might confuse users? I think that's a different discussion from do we want to improve rate? Yes, we want to improve rate if we have a clear way. What we probably don't want is a number of different rate implementation we keep forever. We want one that is the best, unless we all agree you need two different ones for different use cases, which might be the case, but yeah, we don't know yet. I think Victoriometrics has just one rate implementation. It's just different from Prometheus. It's more like X-rate, the X-rate proposal. So they also don't offer two different ones. They just offer the one they deem best. Okay, but yeah, now we are branching even more in this discussion. So I mean, so the one consensus I think we can probably have is we want to be more open to add more function, of course, behind the feature flag. So we have an idea if they actually are worth keeping, like we can promote them or demote them, in contrast to Hold Winters where we promoted it immediately. And if it's a function that could be expressed as PromQL, it's a relatively high bar. I mean, we don't say no, but the bar is, it should actually save you a lot of weirdly complicated code. It should not just be a like tiny amount of syntactic sugar. Is that, yeah? I mean, then we have to, Richie, you have already started. Maybe you could add those, what's the word here? Guidelines.
Überrutschen kannte. Function of appreciable complexity is what I just made up.
I mean, math would be an example where you cannot implement it in other ways in PromQL. I mean, unless you do something weird with the Turing machine.
That is a complexity.
Yeah, you know my phrasing tricks. Like this is, I precisely don't limit, and I also don't constrain. It's just appreciable complexity, so we can still make a judgment call and don't have to lawyer this to the last bit, because we will not be able to lawyer this anyway. So let's try for consensus. Consensus. We are okay adding MET and other functions of appreciable complexity behind one common feature flag. All agreed? Anyone disagree?
I don't think this is understandable for later us or even people who are not in the room, what this means.
Basically, every new...
I mean, I think the bar should be, it should be reasonably useful, and they should either not be implementable in PromQL at all, or if so, then in a really like infeasibly complex way.
It's still very subjective. I feel like when there is a new proposition, there will be a new discussion Dev Summit. It's inevitable, I think.
Yeah, I think it's fine if it's subjective.
I think that's okay.
Just like before, we weren't even clear. Do we have the idea we don't want many functions, right? Because we don't see us as a general statistics language, or are we actually fine with a limited amount? Even that wasn't clear. I think that helps already a lot to have a bit of a rule of thumb here. And the feature flag always allows us to, before we do the final call of promoting it to a stable function, then we can always have another discussion.
Okay, so consensus. We are okay adding MET and other functions which are either not currently doable in PromQL or so complex as to be infeasible behind one common feature flag. All agreed? Anyone disagreeing?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
One more thought. We could ask the people who want the function to contribute a blog post that explains why you want the function.
Yeah, but we don't need a consensus for that. You can always encourage people to write a blog post.
I know, that's just an idea.
Okay. I mean, the second thing, which I think we can write down, that we wanna investigate with CNCF legal, etc., about like feasibility of.
We don't need consensus for this. I have the offer for this in the. I said in the meeting notes that I will poke them.
Okay, so we don't need a consensus call. I mean, it would be that at least we don't outright deny that we want this. I mean, maybe some people feel strongly and say we should never even think about it.
If so, they need to
I
speak
don't
up.
think anyone did.
I mean, I think I'm pretty close to we shouldn't even think about it, but I'm willing to listen.
I think we don't have enough team members here to have this broader discussion, and also I think we need to or must discuss this at least on the team membership mailing list, probably also on the
Okay.
user and developer mailing list,
So
to really get a broader picture.
we deliberately don't write any consents about this for now. Okay, that's also okay. And then, I mean, I would like to come back to Jeanette and tell her what to do with her pull request. Like, should we? And it could be anything. Like, I just would like the decision could be we postpone it, or we want a design doc because maybe we want this. It could also be not for now.
I find the idea of letting people write code for like specific use cases inside of Prometheus still very charming. Like I mentioned this before, like not so much for functions, which is like the other use case, but relabeling is designed to make it so that you cannot write a loop. It is so painful, and so many times I've wished I could just write if else then, and like, yeah. So I kind of want some scripting language in a few places in Prometheus.
You want your infinite loop.
Yeah, if you shoot yourself in the foot, fine. Or we put a 10 millisecond timeout on it or whatever. It's like,
eBPF programs for Prometheus.
Yeah, I was gonna say something, and this might not be fit on this discussion, but it's like kind of related to what Matthias is saying. Like some days ago, me and Nat, we were discussing like if Prometheus aims to achieve like a real metrics pipeline where people can transform, drop, and do many things with more complex solutions like we have on OpenTelemetry, but without need to use OpenTelemetry. This might provide a lot of powerful things for Prometheus metrics ingestion, But as I said, I guess this is not fits the Q&A discussion. It's more aligned with what Matthias is mentioning.
I mean, I think the main counter argument against having a scripting capability is that people would shoot themselves into the foot, or they would start to do weird stuff that gets propagated through the ecosystem, and people would wondering why it's not working on their Prometheus because they don't know it's a function you have to script separately. On the other hand, it could be a nice kind of marketplace, right? People mentioned that there could be where people exchange homegrown function or something, and yeah, I mean, if it would be good to get the temperature in the room if this is something we would actually like or we would actively dislike. In view of,
I think we've shot ourselves in the foot quite a lot by trying to prevent people from shooting themselves in the foot and just making things very hard. So I'm in favor.
But I think that's the shooting in the foot that you see, because you don't see the reverse shooting in the foot. It's like the survivor kind of bias.
The paradox.
What we also don't see is when people go, oh, I guess I just can't do that, when like technically they could with about 100 relabel rules. Like we never see the things that people fail to do. Like, or that people think are impossible.
For each of those users, you also have to see the first-time user opening the Prometheus documentation and being very confused at all the possibilities. I think like a lot of the criticisms we hear about Kubernetes these days, it's not like the one feature that was bad that was accepted, but just like death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. Like every feature that a user does not personally need makes the product worse for that user. So it would at least need to be something that we really want to be sure about, I think.
And
I mean,
in
what I
that,
like it. Sorry, go ahead.
in that sense, I actually think a good strategy of extensibility can make the core Prometheus a lot simpler. That's kind of where I was getting at with the standard library of functions, right? We could even, like in the long run, say we're like in Prometheus 4 or 5, we are reducing the amount of functions that the core language contains. We are simplifying PromQL because we're no longer limiting you to just using PromQL. If you need to do something more, you can script it out here. Right? And we would go from having 20 different statistics functions to having one point where you can plug in any function that you want.
Yeah, but it's like then there will be a million solutions for Z-score or something, right? It might make shareability even harder. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting idea, but what I do think is that this scripting engine thing is a pretty clear boundary. Like, it would be way less clear if you could just write in PromQL define function, or like the Victoria metrics, it's called with, which can essentially do functions, right? It's a very powerful tool. That's like in the language, and people would just use it because they can. While the scripting thing means you have to write in a different language, a different file, which is kind of a bit annoying, but also it makes really clear I'm doing something super weird now, and that's just meant for power users, and you wouldn't stumble upon this by just you looking at vanilla Prometheus usage. So maybe that would be an interesting way of separating things for power users. But yeah, I mean,
as a counterpoint to that, I think like the width in Victoria metrics is usually right next to where you use it. So it's when you read the code, you will find it more easily, and you know it's coming from there.
But like, it really has this, you can probably implement quicksort in, I don't know, like it has this weird thing where it looks very elegant, but you don't even see what kind of algorithm you have just implemented. That's I would definitely be.
Well, that's the experience I have of relabeling as well.
One more thought about, like, if we do this, but I think for now we should postpone it still. Then maybe one way to make it a little bit less confusing is to put everything external under an explicit kind of external namespace. Like, we will have to find some kind of namespacing mechanism, of course. But like,
operator.
Also because like in the future, PromQL, the core might add a function with the same name. So it would be good to have a clear external namespace. Like in Go, right? You also know immediately from which package does this function come. So you never have this confusion of, is this actually a built-in PromQL function or is it not?
I like that. Or it could be like a PromQL function where you just say call name data, something like that.
That's a cool thing. Yeah, that would be.
And then it's very clear. Yeah, I'm calling something external here, right? If this doesn't work, this is not on the Prometheus people. This is on my admins, on my server.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the question is, should Jeanette sit down when she has time and write a design doc, or is it hopeless for now?
Who's against it?
I'm for postponing it. I'm not like 100% against it, but I fear that if we, Gotham is hopeless on it. Like, I fear like it would be a little bit unfair to her to say, write a design doc, and then we're not ready to, like, maybe we're against it still, and then she would do that work unnecessarily. But
that's what I wanted to prevent. I mean, every design doc is written with the option that people say, after having understood everything, I'm actually against it, right? That's also one point of a design doc, to make an informed decision. But of course, if we already deductively know this is something problematic, then you might not even need to do it. Okay, but I think I kind of have an idea now. We might not even need to write anything down. I can talk to her about it. Thank you very much. Should we?
Björn would be up with the next one, but Danny asked if it would be okay if he does his thing. Both are 2 votes. Everyone else, all the other things have.
Can we do the co-mentoring of Prometheus project? Because I would like to do that. I think we don't need Bartek for that. And I think it's going to be a quick one.
Also fine. Oh, how many votes does that? Let me see.
That's 4, the second one.
Oh yeah. We don't have Simon, we don't have Arthur, but okay, sure.
I am here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean we don't have Bartek, we don't have Simon. Yeah, long day.
So consensus, yes. But the thing is, I think the requirement is there should be at least one Prometheus team mentor, ideally for the areas that they own or they work with. But other than that, we can have many co-mentors and they don't need to be part of Prometheus, and I think that's okay. You don't need to be all Prometheus maintainers to be mentoring. But I also want to hear from Arthur, because you were a mentee and you had non-Prometheus mentors. Was there, what are your thoughts on it? Did it help? Did it not help?
Yeah, so the mentorship ends next Monday. It will be the last meeting, and we'll have like a full retrospective, and I can send the retrospective to you after. But in summary, yes, they both Google engineers that are not Prometheus team members. They are very helpful, but mostly in like generical software engineering problems, like helping me with like finding good tests, how to communicate well with others. But they do lack like a clear communication path with other team members. Like there were several times that we got blocked, especially when Bartek was on parental leave. And without a Prometheus team members, this experience is not that great. But with at least someone there that is very active in the community, like the mentorship was great.
I would have expected the same, honestly, because a large part of the project is basically building consensus rather than building software. And you need someone to kind of champion that within Prometheus team. And so we do definitely need a Prometheus maintainer here, for the mentors. But I don't think they should be the only ones. I think we should be open to others who also really want that project done, but they can't actually do the work themselves, but they're happy to do the mentoring. By Richie. So I honestly, I've been a mentor, I've been a mentee, and I think this is good. This is actually better than the status quo. So I don't think we should block it, but I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts.
I also think that those people that are not Prometheus maintainers, they need to at least be close, have some sort of relationship with the team member. I don't think like some random person can mentor someone.
That makes sense. So 1 second was away. Help with software test communication stuff, but not around building consensus. Blocking. So consensus, I'm gonna also go back and update the docs, but consensus should be Okay. Does that make sense? We are okay with people close to the community being a co-mentor, but we require a Prometheus team member to lead the mentorship. Right, because I'm not hearing anything against it, I'm gonna mark it green. But we also don't have a lot of Prometheus team members here. Whom? Should we move to the next one, or should we call it, given we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 team members only?
I mean, maybe Danny, that might be the right
I don't
size
mind.
problem.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I mean, like, we can also discuss it, but maybe not call consensus on this because we don't have enough Prometheus team members. But I would like to kind of, at least it will be giving more context to the people who are here, if that's okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to copy this down. All right, let me copy this and then let me remove that.
Cool. All right.
Go for it, Danny.
Thanks. So problems that we typically run into with recording rules at Grafana Labs is that we have missed group iterations. And so I have a couple of ideas for improving the reliability of those. The one is to evaluate recording rules concurrently where those rules don't have dependencies. And just to recap, like, groups evaluate concurrently, but then the rules in those groups evaluate sequentially because the output of one rule could be used as the input for another rule. But if two rules are independent of each other, then you can just run both concurrently. So that will allow more groups to continue within their group interval based on how much additional concurrency you're willing to give up for that. Julius.
I think there was something similar to this many years ago, and one reason brought up was that dependencies are not even always possible to construct in case selectors look completely disjunct, because selectors might be going to remote storage, which might decide to return something totally different than what you're requesting. Like, you can like say, like, for this selector type, it goes to this remote read endpoint, and then it actually executes a SQL query and gives you back something totally different. So just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if that's a showstopper, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this would be probably either behind a feature flag or the concurrency set to 0. So it would mimic the exact behavior right now. This would be useful in, I think, a majority of cases. Yeah, there's definitely some edge cases where this wouldn't work for folks. So that's the one idea, which is, I think, quite simple and probably not very controversial. The other idea that I have maybe it doesn't fit into that category. So right now, group iterations occur whenever there's a tick of the interval, right? So every minute or whatever. But if your rule group takes longer than that interval to evaluate, then you'll miss the iteration. So one way we could fix this is by using a cursor. So basically storing the last evaluation time of a group in a series, and then just using that timestamp as the base for the iteration, and then you add on one interval time. And then basically, if you fall behind temporarily, which is the case a lot of the time, there's some additional ad hoc querying going on in the Prometheus server, and rule evaluations fail for that one iteration. Then you miss alert rules. You get gaps in your recording rules. And so if you had a cursor, then you at least wouldn't get gaps in recording rules. We always have to run alert rules on the most recent interval, but for recording rules, we could have this thing that slowly fills up from the back. And there's a design doc
But
there.
that would mean alert rules might not even see the recording rule that has fallen behind.
Yeah, exactly. So if there is a group with any alert rule in it, then it will be excluded from this. This will only work for groups with only recording rules.
I think people still assume that if I put all my recording rules in one group, in one file, and all my alerting rules in another file, that like that file will see reasonably recent data and not something that has fallen like 10 minutes behind.
Yeah, that's
Like,
a
that's
that's a
a-
pattern that I think we should explicitly document, because there's no guarantee that those rules will be available, that those metrics will be available if you're doing it across rule groups.
Like, I also think this is dangerous because some people don't know about the serial thing, and they might be putting one recording rule in each group. And they kind of still depend on it. It's not very great, but it kind of sort of works, and they're happy with it, and suddenly it will break. I think this would be kind of a breaking change. Yeah, I don't know if you want to do it this way. However, I do like the previous idea, which is to concurrently run if they don't depend on each other.
The thing with the cursors is that it allows falling behind by a much larger amount than what we currently have. Right now, if I write an expensive recording rule, and independently of that, I write an alerting rule that depends on the output and has like rate 5 minutes. My recording rule takes 2 minutes to evaluate, even though I've set the evaluation interval to 1 minute. Everything works out fine because I still see enough recorded samples, right? Like this is a situation I've seen many times where that's just the way it is. Every other recording rule evaluation fails, and it doesn't matter because rate hides a lot of sins, right? And so I think we need to be very careful in violating those assumptions and suddenly having data much further behind. And then we have the problem that like queues do not add capacity. And if my recording rule is actually too slow right now, what we're doing is we are reducing the amount of work by skipping every other evaluation. So it still works out in the end for a lot of use cases, right? Up to a point, but it still works out. But we're keeping up by dropping work. If we explicitly flip it around and say, no, we want every rule evaluation to happen, but we don't have enough capacity to do it, we're just going to fall behind further and further and further. And at some point, we need to stop. Just for TSDB reasons, we need to stop.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's a window that's proposed in that design doc as well, and that could be aligned with your lookback delta, for example, to give the same experience. But then you could argue you don't even really need the cursor in that case. But yeah, I would say like it depends on the operator. You know, if you have a situation where your rule groups are intermittently missing intervals, then this would be a good solution. But if you've got a problem where your groups will just never succeed, then you're always going to get these very consistent gaps. So maybe we can just do more to highlight that that's a problem.
So yeah, I think the action item is to take a look at the cursor proposal. But I think the more actionable one is the concurrency one. Like, I wanted to do this since forever, and I'm happy that someone else is doing it. Yeah, like I know that remote read is broken, or if somebody relying on that particular requirement from remote read will break, but that's not a documented thing, or that's not something that we kind of guarantee. So it might be okay to break this. So we can start with a feature flag now and then flip it to default in Prometheus 3.0. I don't know if I want, like, again, other people chime in. Should we call for consensus for the concurrency scenario? I think there is, yeah.
I don't think we're quite ready for consensus yet. I think we need some more time to read and review and look at the design docs. I like both ideas. I like we're talking about several overlapping features, including I think Danny has been telling me about some interesting ideas for doing automatic backfill using some of this cursor stuff. So having the cursor allows us to do beginning of time backfill on new recording rules. And so it's kind of like setting some of the stage for new features, but yeah, it has some danger and we need to think about it. But I don't see any real big blockers here, but I think the rest of the team needs more time to think about it.
Yeah, I think for the like cursors, we could make it configurable and default to the current behavior like forever. Right? I think the current behavior is the correct behavior for a lot of the use cases of what Prometheus is built for. Like Julius wrote, right? We've always prioritized current data over historical data. But if there are use cases for this, and if it's useful, we could let people like specify a maximum lag on a rule group and say, well, we set like that's 0 by default, but if you set it to 24 hours, we're going to go back in time and we're going to backfill.
And that's a nice idea to do it by rule group. Yeah.
One of the interesting things here, and I noticed this in production, we don't actually have rule group timeouts. The only thing that we get on rule groups in terms of timing out an individual eval is the query timeout, which is a Prometheus wide. Because if Danny and I were discussing this, I think we haven't dug into the code but so maybe somebody else can fill in the blanks here. But we think that individual rules within a rule group get applied the default 2-minute query timeout. So you could have a rule group with 50 rules take and just eval for a very long time before actually failing that one group interval. And so intermediate groups just don't happen. Or intermediate steps, intervals don't happen. So we discovered there's a lot of edge cases and weirdness in the recording rules.
And so one thing to note is the concurrency and cursor stuff, I think, are independent. We don't need to link the two of them.
Absolutely.
So I would also shoot an email to Prometheus dev with the design docs and the proposals so that there's more eyeballs on this. Yeah, in my opinion, this is not
2 emails.
Yes, and 2 emails. Yes. In my opinion, I think we can go forward with concurrency behind a feature flag. But for cursor, it might require more thought and scrutiny.
I think I find the idea very intriguing, and I find it very interesting to see like actually, yeah, we've made this like we are in a certain space in the trade-off space with the current design. What other options are there, right? Like, do we want things to fall behind and then catch up? Do we want to actually like stop the current evaluation and try the next one instead of letting the current one run on for 100 minutes? Yeah. So I think that's kind of that solution space is worth exploring for sure.
Cool. Great. Yeah. Thanks for your thoughts, everyone. I'll chat you in the mailing list then. I'm happy to send those messages to the mailing list if you like, Gotham.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Is that Prometheus-developers, that one?
Yes.
Okay. Will do.
All right, folks. I think that's it. See you all in a month.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, wait. Jan has a hand up.
Sorry, missed like.
Okay.
My bad. See you guys.
Bye. Bye.